How good did that one feel, being able to drive Parker Meadows home?
No, it felt good. I mean, the boys were ready. Skip called me and said, hey.
How is life right now for a Detroit Lion?
Life is good.
I want to see how you and I stack up. I mean, I think I might be able to get you.
Alrighty, let's do it then.
Okay, you ready?
Yep, let's do it.
Come on. After trailing at halftime by 14.
Let's go home. Let's go home. Let's go. Damn. New Year show.
You got soap, dude.
Yeah.
We're back to keeping it local after a few episodes, and we will continue to kind of expand the Chris and Company lore. I appreciate Josh Rosen being on the show a week ago. We're back to our Michigan roots, our Detroit roots. Natalie Kerwin of FanDuel Sports Detroit will be joining us on the program today. First timer on the show. We've made an attempt in the past, but we were much more serious with our approach this time, and she will be joining us, which I greatly appreciate. I have met her. She's actually interviewed me. I'm not meaning to flex. That's just a fun note here. I think the home opener for 2023. So a whole lot has changed in her life. A whole lot has changed within the Detroit Tigers organization. We're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about the Pistons, all things Detroit sports, and uncover a little bit about her past as well. Before we get into the interview, I just want to say you can follow me on Twitter at Castellani 2014. While you're at it, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Continue to hammer that subscribe button. Let's get those watch hours up here on I was about to say the Twitter sphere, but more on the YouTube sphere, if that's a real thing. CastellaniContent.com, that is getting updated every day with the Tiger videos, with the stuff that we do here with I'll Say This and Chris and Company. Anything you want in terms of the content that Austin and I produce, it's all backlogged on CastellaniContent.com, so you can keep an eye out for all of that stuff. We'll be back with something of a recap and give you a few more show notes, but for the time being, welcome into Chris and Company, and let's get to our interview with Natalie Kerwin. Chris Company, episode 58, Natalie Kerwin joining us today of FanDuel Sports Detroit. You've seen her all around covering really all four of the major sports teams. I know obviously you're a Spartan graduate as well. We will ask about that at some point in this interview. But first question, because I try to do my research for these interviews, and I try to ask stuff that if it's been unearthed, maybe hasn't been publicized enough, and that's the fact that you come from a skiing background. You were a former all-state skier, and I find that very interesting because, as you know, I've talked about with people, like when you're born, you're often kind of handed a football, basketball, tennis racket, what have you. Skiing is a bit more of a niche thing. So how did that all begin for you to kind of getting your skiing career going?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me on here.
Of course.
And skiing, I mean, it's a huge part of my life, and I love that you did do your research on this, because this is something that I love to talk about. Yeah, I mean, for me, I guess, sure, I was handed a pair of skis when I was little, not right out of the womb, right? But it was like 3 or 4 years old. It's like that I want you to try. Both my parents, they grew up skiing, and for me and my younger brother, they wanted us to try it too, see how we liked it. So I learned at a really young age, really as soon as I could, I guess, play sports. And I loved it right away. Luckily enough, I grew up by a bunch of ski hills and was able to learn at a place that's like 20 minutes from my parents' house, and would go out every weekend and do the ski lessons on the bunny hills and all of that. And then once I was 6 or 7, they wanted me to try alpine ski racing. Niche thing, and I always just tell people it's what you see on the Olympics with the gates. When the racers are going around and hitting the gates with their hands, that's one event. That's slalom. And then there's giant slalom, which are the ones with the flags on them, and the gates are wider apart. And the rest is history. That was my biggest sport I did all through elementary, middle school, high school.
And did you know, because I was looking at kind of resume and past jobs you've done, and everything going back to college is in the field of sports broadcasting, which kind of makes me think like this was a goal from the beginning, at how young of an age did you know, like, I want to be in sports broadcasting or sports media in some capacity?
Well, I've been a sports nut since I was little. Again, like raised in a household where it was like, yeah, you're going to try this, you're going to do this, you're going to watch Lions football on Sundays, you're going to come with us to games, we're going to watch the Tigers, we're going to go out to a game, Pistons, Red, like all of it. I was just born into that. That's who the Kerwins are and still are to this day. But as far as wanting to go into it as a career, I honestly did not even think about it until late in high school. And it was a teacher that said something to me. It was an English teacher that was like, hey, like, where are you going to go to school when you graduate? What do you want to study? What are you planning on? And honestly, I looked at him and I said, I don't really know. I'm in my head. I'm like, my uncle was trying to convince me to maybe go into law because he's a lawyer. And then I had other people telling me, oh, go into business. Like, I just had so many ideas thrown at me and I really couldn't figure out what my passion was. And so this teacher just said, hey, like, we all know here in school, you're a great athlete. You're a 3-sport athlete. We know you love that. You're good at my class. It was one of my English teachers. And he said, how about you? Have you thought about sports journalism? And I'm like, that never really crossed my mind, but it sounds like a cool career. I always admired Erin Andrews growing up, and I always thought, oh, that'd be so cool to have a job like her, but I never really thought about it. And so he encouraged me to go do a shadow at a news station in their sports department. So I went and did a one-day job shadow at Channel 7 in Detroit and just fell in love with it. That's all it took. It was just one day of me going down there being like, okay, I could see myself doing this. And I decided that was going to be my career from there. So I ended up going to Michigan State and majoring in broadcast journalism with a focus in sports, and never changed my mind, never changed my major. I figured out right away that was a passion, and it took someone else in me to really, I guess, understand that is what my path should be. So
for sure. And I'm always curious when it comes to Michigan State graduates, because like I've grown up in Lansing my entire life, and I always find there's a real sense of community in East Lansing. Not to say that there isn't in other areas, but I think that especially when it applies to what goes on with the basketball program. And I saw that you did a little bit of time as a beat reporter for was it Impact 89 was the name of it, the FM station there. And it's interesting because I've said this before in other interviews. I don't know Michigan State basketball without Tom Izzo. It's the only, that's the only coach they've ever had. So it's like, I tell people it's going to be very weird when he retires. But, as somebody who attended the school, who was a fan, like, I've always wondered, did you have was there a fear of meeting your heroes type of thing when you became somebody that was covering the program? Because you have this idea of what Tom Izzo is as a basketball coach, as a leader, as a head of a program, and then all of a sudden it's kind of like you're inside the TV, so to speak. What were your experiences like in the interactions that you've had with Tom Izzo?
For me, I came in as a freshman knowing like, hey, I'm about to be at a Big Ten school that has storied basketball program and football too, just athletics as a whole. I was really excited about the big reason. I wanted the Big Ten experience. I also wanted a place that would give me the experience that I needed, especially as a student reporter, to hone my skills before going off into the real world. So for a guy like Tom Izzo, you see him as a god, right? Yeah. Like growing up, you're like, this is the guy that everyone knows. You think of Michigan State University, and Tom Izzo is one of the things that pops in your mind, amongst others. But Tom's at the top for a lot of people. So I was scared to death to meet him for the first time, and then especially as a reporter, it's like I'm a student hanging in the media room after a game, wanting to ask him a question. So for me, it was the best thing ever to meet my hero in a sense, because he treated me like I was anyone else in the room. It didn't matter. And to this day, even though I'm not in Lansing anymore, I'll still see him at events, or when I'm back up in East Lansing, if I'm roaming around the Breslin, and I've ran into him a couple of times. He's like, hey, Hugh. He's like, Natalie, how are you? How are things in Detroit? Like he takes the time to remember people, especially the ones that, he realizes we're scared as students a little bit. And I think he thinks it's kind of cool if you, I don't know, have a pair of balls and ask a question. And so I challenged myself to do that. Yeah. And even after leaving Michigan State, I stayed in Lansing, worked at Channel 10, the NBC affiliate, and still covered Michigan State all the time. So I technically got to cover him for 6 years. So I was able to build a relationship in some sort of way with him. Yeah. And he's incredible. He's one of the best people I've ever done an interview with. He is so thoughtful about his answers. He's a heck of a coach. He has a way of bonding together every single team he has, no matter if it's a good year or a bad year. That team always has chemistry, no matter what. And I just appreciate that about him. So Tom's one of the best. He's our GOAT. One of our goats.
100%. And it's a really, I feel like Michigan State and Michigan State basketball in particular is a very good place to kind of get your feet wet as a journalist, just because from what I've gathered from the people I've talked to, I don't know if there is a more media accessible basketball coach in college basketball than Tom Izzo. And so it's not to say that there aren't things that are, kept secret, but I think it's much more accessible and easy to probably cover a Tom Izzo team than it is maybe some other schools in the Big Ten for that reason. But obviously let's jump ahead now to the world of Detroit sports professionally, because I think that the era that we're in now and the era that I kind of associate your time in Detroit with is what I'm referring to as the Renaissance. And I would say it probably started with the Lions. I'm just going to say it started with that Green Bay win at the end of 22, and it's kind of continued across all of the major sports up to this point over the last several years. But I want to start primarily with the Pistons right now, because I think that their turnaround can't be overstated as a group that, set an NBA record for consecutive losses in 2024. Monty Williams gone after 1 year. I mean, the stories out there. Then all of a sudden, in pretty rapid succession, the ball started getting rolling, and you bring in Trajan Langdon, and Cade takes over as a superstar, and you bring in some really good veteran pieces. And the thing that I've heard from so many people is that not only were the wins starting to accumulate, but just in terms of feel culturally, it felt like they were in a much better, different place as an organization. As somebody who's been kind of closer to the inside, what were some of the things that you saw throughout the year that made you believe, okay, this is kind of different compared to some of the Pistons teams we've seen over the last decade?
I knew things would be different just from a cultural standpoint. I didn't know it would reflect over to wins and losses so quickly and have the season that this team just did. But I knew coming in, when both of those guys sat down and they were on the same wavelength of, hey, we're going to get back to that old gritty, defensive-minded Detroit basketball that this town knows, whether it's from the Bad Boys era or the Going to Work era. This team rebranded again, and we're going to wipe the slate clean of last year, although it's, you got to acknowledge it. We're not going to let that hang over our heads this season. And so for me as a media member to sit back and hear them speak at both their intro press conferences, it's like, okay, yes, we're going to do this. Now, it's hard because any coach, president, any GM can come in and say, hey, this is the game plan. Here's what we're going to do. But it might not always go that way, right? You hear a lot of coach what you want to hear, but you don't know if it's going to reflect right away. And they did bring in, as you said, those key veteran pieces, Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., Tobias Harris, and then, of course, later in the season, Dennis Schroeder comes in at the most perfect time at the trade deadline. It's like you bring in guys that are not only leaders on the court, but vocal leaders too. And I think that's something that this Pistons team was really lacking this year. Like even throughout the 28-game losing streak and just the 14-win season that they had, I think you couldn't depend on a guy like Cade Cunningham, who's so young still, to step up and be everything you want him to be yet. Like he was still a little bit of a work in progress, dealing with injuries, all of that. It's like you needed some veteran pieces last year who have been through the trenches, the ups and downs, that could have came in and tried to, speak over the group a little bit differently and show it on the court too. And so this year, I think just right from the get-go, I believe our schedule, it was really tough those first couple of weeks. I think our first 6 opponents were teams that ended up going to the playoffs this year. I think it was like Celtics, Pacers, who we're obviously seeing right now in the finals, the Cavs. It was just, I remember it being really tough, and it was like 4 straight losses. Team started to, it was like, okay, a couple wins here, maybe a couple losses there, a couple wins, and you just started to see it stack on top of each other. And even after the losses, the guys in the locker room would say, it's all right. We're good. Like, you got to wipe the slate clean and we're ready to go into game day the next day. And that's exactly how JB would tell them to think of it. I think those guys really buy into what JB preaches. You can just tell they love him. It's just, they see him as maybe a father figure, a friend, but also just as their head coach. And they, I could see it in practice. I could see the way JB would get on guys if they're talking while he's talking. Like, I think just the respect level was there from the start, and then obviously reflected into how they played throughout the year, and the confidence just continued to build. And it took them to their first playoff appearance in however many years, first playoff win since 08. Like, it was incredible. And we can get into details, but overall, I feel like that's just what I could see from start to finish. It was just a building of confidence with this group they brought in.
For sure. And I think that one common thread throughout Detroit sports over the last several years is the importance of mixing in good veterans with the young talent you have. I think that there's a lot of teams, and it's more often in baseball, where it's this idea of we have to be young, we have to produce from within, and you do. But I think whether it's the guys that you mentioned, like the Tim Hardaway Juniors, the Schroeders, the Beasleys of the world, or the baseball side guys like Gleyber Torres, these are a lot of young players, and that's great. But they got to learn how to win too. And guys like Cade, no fault of his own, had kind of known nothing but a lot of losing up to this point. He gets some guys in here with playoff experience. He starts to thrive. The team starts to thrive. And you brought up JB Bickerstaff, and I want to compare him just for a second to another, head coach / manager here in Detroit, which is AJ Hinch, because I feel like one thing I hear about from both organizations, and you even alluded to it with the Pistons there, is buy-in and belief, and that there has been a 180 overhaul in the organization in regards to it finally feels like everyone is on the same page, which I think is very interesting because from an emotional standpoint, I don't find AJ and JB Bickerstaff to be comparable really at all. It's completely different styles. AJ is a very mild mannered, and not to say that JB isn't easygoing, but it's just, he's much more intense during games. He sticks up for his players during games. Again, not to say AJ doesn't, but you saw, the angry challenges, you saw the technicals throughout the season, but the players loved that. The players bought into that. And so you see kind of the different philosophies, and yet there's been success on both sides. So this is kind of a roundabout question here, but between the two of them, despite how different they might be on the outside, what are some similarities that you see between the two of them in regards to their leadership?
Well, I think they have a way of relating to these young guys in the way that they want both organizations to be, right? It is two groups. When you look at both the Tigers and the Pistons, they are mostly young guys. Now you have veterans in there for the Pistons and also for the Tigers too. Gleyber Torres, I know he's been here for a few years now, but he's considered a vet as well. You have some guys on the pitching staff that are going to come in too, who have been around and seen some things. It makes a difference. But I think the way that both AJ and JB go about it, regardless if their personalities are similar or completely different, I just think it's the way that they encourage. I might be wrong on this, but I'm more close to this mark. I'll just say at the beginning of August. I want to say it was August 4th. They had a 0.2% chance of making the postseason.
Yeah.
0.2%. You told those guys, we have potential in this group. Yes, we have guys down in AAA that can come up. And yes, we're trying to grow the program from within. But man, that team dug deep. And suddenly it was like stacking one win on top of another one, on top of another one. And then they make it all the way into October baseball when they had a 0.2% chance out of nowhere. And AJ's the kind of guy that we call him, the chess man. He knows the right pieces to plug in where. He's the best at it. I don't know any manager that does it better than him. He's so good with specific matchups, and it's just so intriguing to watch and just hear him talk about it. It's amazing. And I think his players all know it too. They're like, there's no one more that we want as the guy leading this group than AJ. And so I think just, again, it's like a coach that just truly believes in you. I think you can tell the ones that really feel it and really are just kind of faking it because they have the coach title. I just feel like both AJ and JB really care. They care to win. They care to be here. They care about these guys, and they care about reviving the city of Detroit through this renaissance, as you're calling it. I like that.
Yes. Yeah. And I also think that it just helps in sports that you have two guys who have already done this. Obviously, JB coming from Cleveland, AJ coming from Houston. It's so, I think in the past, Detroit sports has kind of taken flyers out on first-time coaches, and it's just that's such a difficult thing to ask because you yourself are kind of learning on the job. I also think that between the two of them, like, and this extends to Campbell as well, but like there's a simplification in regards to their approach, which is if you look at a schedule and like you bring up the Tigers from last season, had they have looked at things and said, oh my God, we got to make up 10 games and, or, 60 games, try to build, it becomes daunting when it is as simple as what's tomorrow look like? What does today look like? And then all of a sudden it kind of stacks up to on top of each other. I think if the Pistons came into the season saying we have to win 30 more games compared to what we did a year ago, that probably seems like a pretty daunting task. When it pivots to let's just see what we can do today, things become a heck of a lot easier. I like so many of the pieces that you've done, kind of the behind the scenes stuff of Detroit sports, especially focusing on the athletes themselves. Because I always view athletes in a similar vein as how I view actors, where it's like you are or movie stars, where it's like you have been so laser focused on this one thing your entire life, your entire career. And then when you kind of get them in a position where you're asking them to break things down, it's not always a super comfortable environment because I think especially as an athlete, like once you become a professional athlete, there's this expectation of this slight celebrity status that a lot of guys aren't super comfortable with. So in your time now, in the several years you've been doing this for FanDuel, what's one thing that you thought you knew about athletes or a mindset that you had about athletes coming in that has changed since you've started doing this?
Well, those sit down in-person interviews are my favorite thing to do. Mm-hmm. I call them my bread and butter. Yeah. I love feature stories because, to your point, we do view these guys as superhumans and all they do is just their one sport when really they have a life outside of the basketball court or the baseball field or football field, whatever you may have it. And I think that's the best part of working in sports is finding out who these guys really are. And I think for me, I came in just thinking that, a lot of them, you have this idea in your mind that a lot of them have egos and it's about the money and the fame and look at me, I'm on TV and I have everything I could ever want in my life, when really a lot of these guys came from humble beginnings. Yeah. And you don't realize, especially in baseball, working your way through the minors for so many years. Some of these guys are making their major league debuts late into their 30s. And it's crazy just to hear the grit and the grind and the side jobs that they had to work. Especially, my mind keeps going to baseball because I feel like a lot of those guys have really been through it. Oh, yeah. But it's all sports. It's like maybe they had not a great home life growing up and they somehow made it out of their town and they were able to pick up a basketball at the local court and somehow got discovered. And there's just so many different ways guys have made it to where they're at. And I just think that's an amazing thing to remind myself of is, yeah, they might have it all right now, but they didn't. And I think these guys do appreciate, at least the ones I've covered here in Detroit. I can't speak for all athletes, but the ones I've come across, the guys on these teams really are good people at the end of the day. And it's not just about going out and winning a game and having fans buy your jersey and you get to live the dream life of traveling and doing your thing. It's like, these guys are good people. A lot of them have charities. A lot of them are close with their family members. A lot of them do good things out in the community. It just makes you realize that they're not just these people that are, I guess superhuman is the word I used, but people that don't care. They really are good dudes all the way around. And I just love hearing what they do on their off days and just where they came from, their life stories, their journeys. That's why I'm a journalist, because I'm so curious about people and where they started and how they got to where they are now. So I think that's really surprised me, is just some of their backgrounds are crazy and just wild to where they are now. So it's fun to look back at that with them too. They enjoy talking about it.
One word I use all the time, because winning is fun and in a lot of ways solves everything. But I find the current crop of athletes in Detroit and coaches very likable. And I think nationally that's a perception as well. Like I think that probably started with the Dan Campbell stuff, but over the last few years as Detroit sports has improved, like there's not a ton of inflated egos. You don't hear a ton about guys like getting in trouble. And of course that, the success is there and that makes things more fun. Has there been a personal story that you cover that stands out to you where you kind of came away from it being like, man, this feels almost unreal and something you couldn't wait to kind of tell the public?
Yeah, there's one I haven't been able to share yet because it just didn't come up in a game situation this year. So I'll save it for this coming basketball season. It's a Pistons story, actually. It's about Dennis Schroeder. He is someone that comes from really humble beginnings. He grew up in Germany and just a lot of adversity and different things growing up, bullying, things like that. And he found an outlet in using a local skate park near him. And he became like a sick skateboarder, like really, really good. And there happened to be a basketball court that was next to the skate park. And one day, I don't know if it was a friend or someone that was like, hey, let's go and try and shoot some hoops. He'd never played basketball in his life. And so he ended up splitting time between the skate park and playing on the basketball court and just was a natural at shooting hoops. And guys that played pickup each week were like, who is this kid? Like, where did he come from? We've never seen him around. And a local coach discovered him at these basketball courts and was like, hey, like, I'd love if you join the rec league that I help coach. And so Dennis joined this rec league. It was like age 11 or 12. And he was just a natural at it, got really good, started playing with older kids. And then from there, it was like one thing after the other. And he ended up, getting really good over in Germany. And then obviously came over here to play in the NBA. Like everything just sped up for him. And I just think that's a really cool story because skateboarding isn't a common thing for a lot of people. And he's still really good at it to this day. And in a piece I was reading about it, there was a documentary that was actually made on Dennis Schroeder when he was still on the Brooklyn Nets. And so it's on YouTube if anyone wants to go and watch it. It's really good. And I've been meaning to talk to Dennis about this more in depth. So that's something I want to, hopefully share on a broadcast next year with him, or maybe it's him and I do a sit down story on it. But it's just funny. He thinks a lot of the things that he learned while skateboarding, just some of the skills and tricks and just the quickness, and I've never skateboarded, so I can't speak to it, but has translated over to basketball. And a lot of those skills have, translated over. And his mom, I guess, still hates that he skateboards sometimes to this day and is like, Dennis, you can't be doing that. You're going to hurt yourself. But It's just cute. I just think that's cool. So he's a guy that came from not a great background growing up, just spent a lot of time outdoors, got really good at two different sports. And here he is now over in America, absolutely killing it. He's been a part of a lot of playoff teams, helped the Pistons this year when they needed it most. When Jaden Ivey went down, Dennis was the guy that came in a month later at the trade deadline and helped this team end the way that they did this year. So that's one that stands out to me that I think is pretty cool.
Have you thought about doing like a power rankings of Natalie Kerwin's skiing skills with Dennis Schroeder's like skating skills to see like how they match up or compare?
Look at you coming up with future content ideas, Chris.
You can take this one. You're welcome.
Hey, I'll give you a shout out. Don't you worry.
Thank you.
That's a good one. Him and I should do that and like try and compare and write stuff down on a clipboard and be like, well, can you do this? Can you do this? I think that'd be great. Mm-hmm. All right. We're throwing this into a future feature idea.
Perfect. Thank you. And I will save this clip for future use. But it seems I find it very interesting because with the journalists that I talk to, there's been a few who feel as though it's been almost easier to cover a team when they're struggling, and some that have poo-pooed that and said no. When the team's doing bad, everyone's kind of miserable. And I'm curious because with the situation that you're in and the questions I see asked, I would almost feel like to a certain extent there would almost be something therapeutic from an athlete's perspective about opening up about the struggles when things aren't going so well. Like we had Cody Staven on here a while back who said, he loves covering the Tigers right now and he loves the ascension and the fact that they're doing better, but said it was things were more media accessible when things weren't going so well during the Avila era. I guess from your standpoint, do you find that coaches and players are more likely to open up about their failures or about their successes?
It's a really good question. For me and my personal experience, I guess the Pistons come to mind first, just comparing 2024 to 2025. It was really hard as journalists to cover that team. And it just from a matter of, 14 wins, you're on a 28-game losing streak. What else do you ask them? What else do you talk about? For them, I from their perspective, I could see how it probably felt repetitive. Like, hey, turnover woes were an issue again. How do we get out of it? Or, hey, you guys weren't able to get any shots off really tonight. How do we fix that coming into next game? It was just the same questions, but trying to ask it in 28 different ways during that losing streak. And then even just throughout the season, it's like, how do you rephrase what you're trying to get at? That was a challenge for me as a journalist, trying to get them to talk about different things. And they were open to talking about the struggles, but I could just tell it was so like, yes, I get it. I have to do it as an athlete. We have to talk to the media. It's part of the gig, but they didn't want to be there. They were just tired of being in that state of mind, constantly getting ridiculed, not just by us, but then they go home and they're getting blown up in their Twitter DMs, Instagram DMs too, of, hey, just all different things. I'm sure, they would all say it. They're like, we've been trying to stay off our phones and not look at our DMs because people are flooding us with just, God, they get death threats. They get just ridiculed about everything. And it's just not fair. And it was just really hard for them. So for me, it was hard to find story ideas, how to change it up, how to make the broadcasts more interesting. Maybe from a Tigers perspective, just since I've only been here for 3 years, I've seen them talk more during the successes, but they're also not afraid to talk about the failures either. It got similar to what Cody had said. They're open and willing, and they know they have to, and they always end it on a positive, though. I've noticed that about all these guys. So like, yep, we might not be doing well. We've lost 10 straight games, but we're going to be better for it, and we're learning, and we'll get the bats going again. And I've noticed that when we've gone through tough stretches. So again, back to these athletes here in Detroit, no one has too big of an ego to ditch the media and not be real with us. They all keep it real. And that's what makes me appreciate these Detroit guys a heck of a lot more, is they're just always honest with you, good or bad. So hard for me. I know hard for them too, but now that we're seeing success for both of those teams, Lions as well, and then hopefully the Red Wings start to get things together too. It definitely winning, they say winning cures all. It definitely does. Definitely makes everyone's lives better and easier.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I completely understand both sides. Like you talk about the Pistons a few years back, like that was the story. You do have to ask about it. Like you're completely ignoring the elephant in the room if you don't ask about, where these struggles are coming from, why they're happening, but at the same time, from an athlete's perspective, I would be in the exact same, I would feel the exact same way they would, which is like, enough. Like we have to talk about this every day. We're completely aware. It's the business side of things. I mean, both sides have a job to do. You work it's FanDuel now. And one thing, I've never asked this question. I don't think I've ever seen anyone ask this question. When you work for FanDuel, and obviously you are a reporter, are you allowed to bet on sports?
We've never been told we can or can't.
Okay.
There's been I know. Well, it's interesting, right? Because we have changed names. I mean, it was Bally right before, it turned to Bally right before I came here. And then it was Fox, obviously, for so many years before that. Now FanDuel. I think if we do, it's got to be on FanDuel. I'm not a sports bettor, so okay. But for other people, I'd be curious to ask some of my coworkers who do bet if we haven't been told. I think if we use other betting apps and platforms, I guess we just shouldn't share it out loud to the public, to the world. Right. The answer is FanDuel only, right?
For sure.
That's what I should say.
And I'm not trying to put you in a compromising position, but it's just something where gambling as a whole is so it's so promoted now, and it's made me wonder if that's something that exists kind of internally, because like even when I worked for a gaming company, my whole philosophy is like, I have too much emotion to bet on or against the teams I root for. Like, because then
I know that's the thing.
Yeah, because then if we lose, it's a double whammy. If we win, like I don't want to get into a point where financials are really like impacting. I just want my team to do well. But no, it was just something that I thought of. A couple more here. You know, you've done so many different segments with different athletes, different coaches, and you know you're such a natural at this, and I'm sure you hear that a lot. But you know, this is something, you know, you have this job for a reason. Obviously, is there a particular person or a particular segment that you were most nervous for coming into doing it?
Well, I mean, when I first got this job, definitely my first broadcast being thrown onto that was nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
My first game that I did was on the road, Pistons at Lakers. What more nerve-wracking environment to be in than like a Saturday night in LA? You got LeBron James. You have every celebrity courtside. They had me interview Rip Hamilton right off the bat. I'm like, what am I being thrown into? This is crazy. Because when I first got the job, they told me, hey, you're going to be doing a lot of digital segments for us, a lot of those sit-down stories. Maybe you'll get some opportunities to fill in on games. Well, what do you know? Down the road, I was hired in March of 2022, and that about like, you know, later that year, that Pistons season, right away, they're like, hey, we actually need you out on the road. George Baja's taking some time off. Johnny Kane's going to fill in at play-by-play. Here you go, kid. And so it was just thrown to the wolves. So I remember being nervous for that. Didn't have a ton of time to prepare for that. I mean, just ahead of time, it was like, hey, last minute, we're having you go on this trip. I think when I've interviewed some bigger names, I get a little bit nervous. Yeah. My favorite athlete since I was little has always been Barry Sanders. The Lions were always my team that I followed growing up. My parents have had season tickets since the Silverdome days. It's just the Lions have always been a part of our household. You can probably see got a Lions chain here in the back. Yeah. We got some bobbleheads. I got some helmets here in front of me. And so I had the opportunity to interview Barry Sanders a couple of years ago when I covered the Rocket Mortgage Classic in Detroit. So that's another fun part of my job too. I get to do just fun, like random features out in the community too that don't have anything to do with any of the pro teams that I cover. So that was just, hey, celebrity scramble. You're going to go and cover it. We'll put it on our social channels, interview who you can. And it was like Calvin Johnson, Barry Sanders, Tom Izzo, a bunch of Chris Webber. I can't remember who else was there, but those were the four that stuck out to me. And I'm like, okay, like let's grab as many of these guys as we can. And luckily I knew Tom from back at my MSU days, but I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to grab Barry Sanders. This is my time to meet my actual hero. And that I had to keep it inside. It was nerve wracking for me. I'm like, what do I ask this guy? What do you ask the GOAT? What do you, where do you even start, right? He's at a golf tournament. Do you ask him about his golf game? Do you get into football? Do you miss football? How about his kid who's at MSU now on the basketball team? Like, where do you go with this? And I just remember telling him before the cameras started rolling, hey, I just want to let you know the reason that I'm truly doing what I'm doing is because I have a passion for sports, but that passion for sports began at a young age when I used to watch old highlight tapes of you. I have your jersey. It was my first jersey. I just wanted to share that, Barry. You're awesome. And I wanted to take the time to tell you that before we got started. And you got the biggest smile. And it was just the most rewarding thing ever. And so I'll never forget that. But that was pretty nerve-wracking. I didn't really know where to go with it. So I spilled my guts out right away. But he ended up loving it. So what else are you going to do in that moment?
Yeah. And that when it's kind of impromptu like that, is it difficult professionally not to kind of fangirl out and be like, holy, like I'm actually talking to Barry Sanders? Or are you able to kind of internalize it and be like, all right, I got a job to do. And then when the cameras are off, I'll do kind of the fangirl stuff.
Yeah. Well, on the inside, yes. Do I want to fangirl? Of course. Yeah. But I also know I'm a professional. Got to keep it in. Got to keep it inside, Nat. You can fangirl to everyone else later when you call them on the phone. Guess who I just interviewed? Guess what I just did? That's exactly what I did as soon as I left the tournament. But in the moment, I am able to just peel it back a little bit. Just take a deep breath. Hey, you're good.
Yeah.
Like talking to a friend. Just even though it's not, just pretend like you're talking to your next door neighbor. Take it easy. Keep the voice calm, just as you'd interview anyone else. So that's what I have to channel. Yeah. So I have a little routine in my head on like how I can get there. But yeah, the fangirling doesn't come out. I do keep it, of course, got to keep it professional. That's part of the job. And that's what signing up for this is, hey, you can't be You can't be a fan. You can't ask for autographs. Maybe you can ask for a picture at the very end. Like, hey, can I grab a quick photo with you? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. A lot of people do that. So you just have your wits about you, and that's what I try to do. But it's not easy sometimes when it's people like that.
For sure. And I think that that's where like preparation really pays off there. Cause it's like, if you come in with your set line of questions, you know, and you're kind of focused on hitting all those beats, you kind of get in a positive way, like that tunnel vision of like, you know, I have a job to do. Like I interviewed Scooble twice, and, you know, he's great both times. I loved it, but, you know, I did my research for it, and it was literally, and this is probably the most self-aggrandizing story I'm ever going to tell on the air, but whatever, I'm proud of it.
Let's hear it. Come on, keep going.
It was yesterday, or for the people listening, it would be June 8th. So the Sunday game against the Cubs. And I'm walking back to my car, which was at the Ford Field parking structure at the time. And a gentleman was pulled over to the side of the road, just kind of with a peace sign out. And I walked up to the car just kind of see who it was. And it was him with a huge smile on his face. And
Shut up.
I know. So immediately, and Tarek, if you're listening to this, I hope this is okay that I'm telling people the story. I've told as many people as I can. So it was weird because in the interviews, I felt like in general, as much as I can be kind of buttoned up, like, you know, you're asking the questions, he's doing you a favor being on your show. But when I saw him there in public, I was just like, dude, I love you so much. Like, thank you, man. You're the greatest. Like, thank you so much, buddy. Like, you never know, like, when you kind of have that internal reaction, just because when I interviewed him, the way that I viewed it was, hey, look, we're both late 20-somethings that love baseball. So like you have that commonality. Don't try to look at, but he's also the best pitcher in the world. So when I see him out in public, I'm like, that's our guy. Like that guy has brought me so much joy. But, moving forward to the last, back to the realm of the air.
I want to ask you a question with this.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So he was pulled over to the side of the road, was giving you the peace sign. Did you recognize it was him at first? Or did you have to kind of walk up and you're like, oh, hey, man?
When I saw his face, I knew right away. When I go to Comerica, I'm very blessed and fortunate that very often a lot of people do recognize me from the videos and stuff like that. So my initial reaction was, that's probably what this is. It's somebody who's seen me on Twitter, seen me on TikTok, stuff like that, which is always great, but there's only one Tarek. So I immediately there was this kind of probably 1 second, period where you adjust and it's like, oh, that's actually I know that face, just kind of natural reaction. But yeah, once I noticed, I came running up to him and just said thank you. And so that was very cool. But I go back and I watch the interviews, and I find it very funny just because I know my body language better than anybody, and I can see the moments where I'm not to be like Garth and Wayne's World and bow down to the guy, the way that the way that I kind of want to deep down. But it's been that to me, and I'm sure you could probably speak on this as well as somebody who's on TV consistently. That's my favorite part of the job, is just the connections. It feels like, even if and I guarantee you it's similar on television as well, where there's this sense of community and commonality that we find through social media and through the kind of reports, where it feels like we know each other in a weird way, having gone through these experiences with these teams. And it's why I have this tremendous respect for what you guys do, and also this era of Detroit sports. And honestly, one of the first things I did, you brought up Johnny a minute ago, but one of the first people I thought of when the Tigers clinched the playoffs last year was I texted him, and now he was obviously having champagne poured on him, so he didn't get to it till the next morning.
He was a little busy.
Of course, but I just, in that moment, it reminded me of man, you guys had to be in it every day when things weren't always great, and to see the success. I will never tire of days like what we had over the weekend against the Cubs, where it's just weather's great, team's doing really well. And I think that, you don't want to have to go through some of the experiences with the Tigers or what the Pistons went through. I think it definitely made the run they had to play New York in the playoffs last year that much more fun, being we've known what life is like on the other side. To see the ascension, so to speak, is awesome. Last question, and we just talked about Tarek a little bit, but of all the Tigers that you've interviewed, and it's been so strange, it makes me feel old, because we're at a point now, Andy Dirks being on the broadcast, it's I think it was 5 seconds ago I was in high school watching him play for the Tigers. Now he's on the broadcast.
I know, right?
It's same with Austin Jackson and some of these guys, Alex Avila. Which current Tiger do you feel is destined to have a job in media in some capacity?
So when I think of guys with huge personalities, that could help carry a broadcast, I can't help but think of the bullpen. Will Vest is an absolute nut.
Yeah.
He could totally take over a broadcast booth. Doesn't matter what you throw him in, play-by-play, color analyst, heck, throw him on sideline report. Like, he'd come up with just some wacky things. Because I think of, Jason Benetti now and Andy together.
Yeah.
And they're just such a silly, funny duo. And that's why they're so endearing to listen to, because they are great storytellers. They're able to engage the audience, and they have a funny way of doing it. And people like to laugh. And when you're watching a long baseball season, you need people that can do that. So I think Will Vest could have a future in it. I think, who else? I'm picturing the clubhouse right now. I'm like envisioning every locker. Who's outgoing? I think a guy like Matt Vierling, which if we get him back again soon, he's so polished when he answers our questions. He has a very endearing smile. He can be funny. Everyone on the team likes him. Last year, they all called him the glue guy because they felt like he was the one that could hold the team together, but also could, not only with his play, but also just personality-wise, like just a good guy to be around. I feel like he'd be a great analyst. So I guess I'll give you like the funny guy answer and Will Vest and also Matt Vierling.
For sure. And one that he's not on the team now because of injury, but that I've seen the personality shine through, and you bring up the bullpen guys, is Alex Lang. Alex Lang strikes me as a guy with a lot of personality. LSU guys are a different breed. Like, they have an energy that is just like I partied once in LSU and I barely survived it. So like, I know that these guys
this needs to be a whole nother segment, Chris. I need to hear that.
A whole other lifetime. But yeah, that was like, so and when he was really rolling here, but prior to the injury, and I hope he comes back because I like the guy a lot. But I always thought that he had a very fun personality. I remember obviously he kind of took over the mic after the combined no-hitter several years back. That was a lot of fun. Well, look, it's been it really has been cool, and I feel, even though, but today I'm literally 30 years old today. Today is my 30th birthday, but I literally feel
Happy birthday, Chris. Why didn't I roll off the top telling you that? I saw this earlier. I'm a bad friend.
Don't worry about it. It's no problem at all. But I bring this up because the older I get with this, whether it's athletes, media, I feel this weird sense of like, all of these people are like my children and I'm getting to see grow up. So it's like from the kind of humble beginnings of you at Michigan State, and now you're doing your thing with FanDuel, and I've seen you all over the broadcast. Like, I love the community here, and I love the media community here. It's been awesome to see you continue to do what you've done. And we hope to have you back on in the future at some point as well. But for the time being, thank you so much for coming on Chris and Company.
Thank you for having me. Seriously, this is awesome. All the kind words and just the hard work that you do too. I don't want you to take yourself out of this because you are part of that, Chris. You are amazing. Tarek Skubal pulling over just to say hi should say it all. Like that's an amazing thing. And just, yeah, for myself, I mean, just to see where I was at, where I'm at now, I feel absolutely blessed and so grateful. It's a dream job. It's a dream to work in my hometown, being a local Detroit girl and meeting people like you and other media members that make it so much fun as well. It's not just the teams that are allowing us to be ourselves and tell stories, amazing stories for that. But it's the people that are around us too that are also in deep with these teams and telling the stories in different ways, whether it's me on TV, on the broadcast, or you through social media being such a recognizable face. It's amazing. So you keep it up too. And seriously, 30 years young.
I know. Yeah. Well, here's to 30 more covering the Tigers and our favorite teams. Thanks again, Natalie.
Heck yeah. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you very much to Natalie. I was about to say Natalie to Natalie Kerwin for being on the program today. I love getting that local angle. Look, our fastball is and will always be Michigan/Detroit sports, and to be able to get a unique and different perspective is always fun. Pretty awesome story, Natalie Kerwin. So I appreciate her hopping on. And yeah, we are continuing to move forward. You can follow me on Twitter at Castellani2014. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We're on TikTok as well, trying to get to 10K by the end of the year. We're on the verge of 7,000, which is, I don't know, probably about 3,000 up compared to where we were at the beginning of the year. So I think we're tracking to do so. We just got to keep the geese flowing. CastellaniContent.com is being updated every day, whether it's Tiger videos, episodes of All Say This, episodes of Chris and Company. We are there. We are uploading stuff consistently. It's an archive of everything that Austin and I create. And while we're at it, shout out to Austin Sisler, who continues to do a remarkable job. I want to thank everybody. I should have done this at the beginning of the show. I want to thank everybody for all the well wishes and birthday wishes on my 30th. I think that and probably my general attitude is a reason for this, but I've really appreciated the positivity that we've seen on social media over the last few months, because I mean, let's be real, social media is not always a positive place, but there's growth and there's adjustment, and it's tough because you want other people to see that, and I hope that you have. But there's been a lot of change in terms of the way that I view my content and the way that I see relationships with other people. And I think we're in a good place. So, continue to support us, continue to like what we do and share what we do as we, get the followers up, get those watch hours up. I believe in this product, and I'm going to continue to. And we also have a pretty darn awesome baseball team that I have the privilege of covering here for the remainder of the season and going forward. So once again, thank you very much for being a part of this journey. Thank you again to Natalie Kerwin. I will talk to you real soon. Have a great rest of your week. Peace and happiness.